Welcome and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today here at Topaz Labs. My name is Rose and I will be your host today. We have Rad A here with us today with a great presentation ahead of us.
Okay, there we go. I think I see myself on the screen. Can you see my screen?
Absolutely.
Okay, we're looking at a dancer here with some ballet slippers. Thanks for the introduction, Rose. I don't know. I think you did it pretty well. I don't know. Sorry, Heath's not here, but that was a pretty good introduction. So, okay. So what I want to do today, it's great to be back doing these. I've had so much fun with Topaz and with the crew there. What I want to talk about today, I know Topaz has been out for a long time now, over a year, the studio, and yet I just want to review a little bit quickly about just kind of around the frame here of what we're seeing. Over here on the left are all of the different effects packages that we have for textures and impressionistic paintings and a host of other things. On the right are the adjustments. What we're looking at is the interface for Topaz Studio, which is a free software or photo editor. And with Topaz Studio, when you download it, I'm going to click on the adjustments tab over here on the right. These 12 or 11, I guess, adjustments here, the basic all the way through vignette, those adjustments come with Topaz. So even at its basic bare bones system, you have a lot of useful tools that you can use for editing, and that is free. So if nothing else, you really owe it to yourself to download that and begin exploring. The rest of these are things that are part of the adjustment packs that are sold a la carte, or you can purchase them as an entire package. And if you go down here, you can go directly out to the site where you can make those purchases. Everything else that we're looking at, this is of course our window where we'll see our image. We have a tray down at the bottom where our images are sitting while we work on them. And then a few other adjustments that we have right here. These are all part of the basic Topaz Studio installment. There's a crop feature, a healing brush, lens correction, which is actually, you can set it, it's a default, but it'll correct for most lenses on most cameras that are out there today. And then there's a masking feature that we can use at the global level. And then if we click on more here, there's some other things for rotating and working with images that way. So just a lot of utility there. There's a lot you can do with just the basic tool. So what I want to talk about today, we've got a lot to cover in the time we have. There are 3 new products that Topaz has, well, 2 of them that are very new, that all use artificial intelligence as their basic engine for getting the performance that they get. One is AI Remix, and it's been out for a while, and it's software that allows us to get some really cool looks to our images that are very graphic oriented. The other tool that is part of my workflow today and almost everything I use is AI Clear. And AI Clear is a noise reduction software, and I've used lots of different tools for noise reduction, and I've never seen anything like this. It's really remarkable. It's been trained on millions of images to identify noise and eliminate it without degrading your image in any way. So we'll see some of that today too. The other thing that I want to touch on is the latest tool released by Topaz called AI Gigapixel. And this is a tool used for upsizing photographs, and it's truly remarkable. Again, it competes with most of the other products on the market, and it is heads above anything I've seen. We'll be taking a look at one of the examples there on how to use that. The other thing that I want to talk about today are using textures. I use textures a lot in the editing and processing of my images, and one of my favorite groups of textures is made by a company called Flypaper. Flypaper textures are just collections of images. They're basically images, JPEG files that you can lay on top of your photo to add tonality and interest to the image. And Topaz is set up to accommodate the use of those textures in a really cool way. So let's just start by working with this image that we have in here right now. This is the feet of one of the dancers that I've photographed in Cuba on my trips there. The first thing that I'm going to do with this image, you notice it's a raw image. I've just dragged it in and dropped it in here to work with it. First thing I'm going to do, it's the very first step in my process, is I'm going to go to AI Clear. Before I do that, I'm going to split my screen like this, and I want you to watch the difference in what this does. Now, with AI Clear, I'm going to go ahead and click it right here, and it's going to run. And you'll notice there's a little progress bar up here at the top in blue moving across. And it does take a minute, and it'll depend on the computing power that you're working with your personal computer, whether it's a Mac or a PC. But I'm actually running a MacBook Pro that has less than what Topaz recommends for its computing power, and it does a pretty decent job for me. It could be faster, and I'd be happy about that, but I am not at all disappointed in the performance, even with a less than spec machine. So look at the difference. This to me is mind-blowing. This is the image before AI Clear, and this is the image after. Look at the difference in the noise that we have here in the tile. This is a tile floor. I mean, to me, that alone right there is amazing. I've just improved my image, a huge amount just by running this application. You'll notice over here in AI Clear, it looks very much like the other adjustments. You can still choose different blend modes, and you've got an opacity slider and all of that. But the part that is important here, you have a low, a medium, and a high model strength for when you choose AI Clear. And I ran this at low. So this is what happens with low. We could run this at a medium or a high, and it may take out more noise. What happens though, a lot of times, and if you've used noise reduction software, you've probably seen this, it can overdo it and kind of make your image very soft. And that's really not what you want to do. So what I find is I start with the lowest model strength possible. If I don't like the result, I might bump it up, but I don't start with high necessarily. If you do start getting some of that softening that you don't like, you've got this recovers detail slider here, and you can, and let's just try it here a little bit. I don't see too much softening that I care about, but you can raise that up and it will reclaim. See how it reclaimed some of that detail? Actually, it's bringing in more noise than detail, so I'm going to bring it back to where it was. But you have that opportunity to mitigate that softening a little bit with that tool. So that's it. One of the other tips I'm going to give you here, as soon as you do AI Clear, go down here and click the Apply button. What that's going to do, I'm going to click Apply right now. What that's doing, it's taking that image, it's just created a new image with that adjustment of AI Clear applied to it. The reason that's important is that if I were continuing to work with this image that I ran AI Clear on, every time I resize this image like this, it's going to recalculate that AI Clear adjustment, and it just slows down your processing tremendously. So what I do is immediately do an apply. This is the result of this application over here of AI Clear, and we're ready to go and work on the image. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and take this split screen off. And again, another adjustment that I often include in my workflow, well, before I do that, this is a raw file. So I want to start with a basic adjustment. And a basic adjustment, I want to make sure that I'm looking at my histogram up here in the top, which is this RGB button on the left will display your histogram. And I want to set my white and black points. I'm going to go down and take my white level and slide it over until I'm watching the histogram, and I want to slide it over until that line meets the edge over here. And I want to take my black level down to the same place on the left. Now, if I take my white level way up here, look what happens to my highlights. It blows them out. So that's why you want to be careful not to go too far there. The other option that you have, or the other tool that you have here, is the exposure slider. And you can increase that exposure slider. And you'll notice as I'm doing that, it's not blowing out on the right. And this is a very intentional design feature of this tool to allow you to adjust your exposure without blowing out your highlights. I'm going to maybe adjust that a little bit and bring that to there, and then I'm going to bring my blacks back down. So that's really all I'm going to do in here. Sometimes I come down and I have a saturation temperature and tint slider, and I might bump my saturation up just a tiny bit. And I'm doing that because with this image, I know I'm going to use some texturing, and I want to be able to have that a very bold image for the textures that I'm going to use. Clarity, shadow highlights here. I don't do clarity because I'll do that in another adjustment tool that we have in Topaz. The next thing I'm going to do, it's another tool that is pretty mind-blowing that I've incorporated into my workflow. It's called dehaze. This is often associated with landscapes and things like that, where you have a bit of haze in the atmosphere. But I have used it on images like this with really interesting results. What I usually do, once I select it, you notice there's a preset a selector here, and if I click on this, there are several different options that I can choose from. There's a dehaze option, there's a light dehaze, and there's a heavy dehaze. And you'll notice as I mouse over the word, it's applying the effect to the image, or it's setting it up so I can see it. I haven't clicked to apply it yet. In this case, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to choose this light dehaze, and it's just giving a little bit of clarity to the image that wasn't there before. If you want to see the before and after of just this adjustment, you can go in here and click the eyeball and turn the adjustment off, and there is the before that adjustment, and then I'll turn it back on, and there's after. So you can see a little bit of, it's darkened the image a little bit, but it's also added a little clarity to it, which is what I was looking for there. So excuse me, the next thing I'm going to do, sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. Yeah, precision contrast. And precision contrast, it's not unlike other contrast sliders that you've used, except it allows you to adjust on 4 different levels within the contrast spectrum. So not just one slider, but 4. And what I want to do as you play with these sliders, I encourage you to experiment with them, you know, max them out or slide them down and see how they affect the image. But with the micro slider here, if I take it all the way up, you can see how it brings out all of this micro detail in the image, way overdone. So what I want to do is back it off a little bit. Here's where we started. And if I just bring it up maybe to about right there, I'm starting to get detail out of this, out of her skirt. And then I'll take my lows and bring it up maybe maybe in between there. And I'm really watching the image at this point as much less than the histogram. I'm watching to see how the image responds to these changes. Once I get that, I want to check my histogram and make sure by doing those adjustments, I haven't either crushed my blacks or blown out my highlights here. And if I do see some of that, I might come down and adjust some of these tones a little bit. Do something there with that. So that's looking pretty good to me. I'm still a little concerned about that spot. So I'm going to bring my midtones down a little, and also my highlights just a little bit here. I think that's a little better. It's okay. And we're going to add a texture here, so I'm not terribly concerned. But it is one of the areas that I would watch because it's starting to get a little bright. Okay, so after that, the next thing I'm going to do here is go to my precision details, and let's see. Yeah, I'm going to go down. I'm going to go to my precision details, which are right here. And the details allow us, again, we can break things down to a very targeted way here. We can work with small, medium, and large details here. And furthermore, if you notice here, we have an overall detail, but we also can work with only the shadows and only the highlights. So if I look at this image, I can start by adjusting my shadows. And again, I encourage you to play with these sliders and see how it affects things, but it's going to affect the details in the darker parts of the image or the shadows of the image. And it may be that you want to bring those out, or if you take them into the negative, you can have a smoothing effect on your image. So it really has kind of it depends on the look you're going for with the image you want. If you're looking for crisp, sharp detail, you can achieve it with this. But if you want more of a soft, dreamy look, you can go into the negative realm there and start to get a little of that. I'm going to kind of go a little bit both ways here. I'm going to bring up some of these. I'm going to go for something about like that. So Again, if I want to see before and after, I can click the eyeball here. There's before and there's after. So it's pretty minimal on the shadows. But now I'm going to go to the highlights, and here's where I can begin to bring out some of the detail in that garment that she's wearing. I'm going to bring those a little bit. Always somewhere around there. And again, I'm watching the image and looking for what I want to see there. I have the opportunity if I want to sharpen here. And then once again, I have the lighting adjustments so I can look to see if I've blown anything out or if I need to do any kind of adjustments. I'm still looking at this area right here. I'm going to drop my white point just a little bit and see if I can't. Yeah, see, did you see that, how it brought that down just a little bit? So I'm really, there's where we started. And there's where we are now. And I know this is pretty textured in a way, but that's okay because I know where I'm going with this ultimately is to apply a texture to it. So let's go ahead and close that up. And I'm just collapsing these by clicking this little caret right here. So the next thing that I want to do, I want to show you another really powerful tool that I use a lot. It's this one called HS Color Tuning. And what's cool about this is that it allows you to isolate colors in your image and adjust them independently. So as you mouse over each of these little color boxes here, you'll see in the image with hash marks where that color is appearing in the image. So I want to affect the tone and color of her slippers just a little bit. So I'm going to click this button right here. And I'm going to come down. Notice I can change the hue, the saturation, and the lightness. Watch what happens when I bring the saturation up. And I'm changing the color of her shoes almost to orange. Now it's way too much, so I don't want that much, but I do want a little bit, maybe about right there. And then the other thing I can do, I can darken that, or I can lighten it. So you have a lot of control over how you adjust this. I want to lighten them just a little bit and maybe a little more saturation. So again, you can go crazy with these adjustments, but that's kind of where I'm at with that. You can also adjust the details a little bit. And if you start to see, sometimes you'll see some artifacts appear or some little aberrations. The suppress artifact slider will help eliminate some of those if you get there. That's all I want to do on this one. I'm going to go ahead and close that up. And the place I'm at now, I want to add a little bit of softness to this. So I'm going to go up to my blurs. And this is one of those tools that's part of the free part of Topaz. I'm going to select blurs. And you notice there's a Gaussian blur and a diffusion blur. And I'm going to select diffusion. And again, I'm going to go up here to my presets and click on this. And you see there are several different blurs. There's a beauty blur. There's a background blur, which is way too soft. There's a diffused portrait, which is very nice, dreamy, and a soft skin tone. And these, by the way, this blur is often really good on portraits where you can get a really nice texture in the skin of your portrait or your subject's face. I'm going to go with the diffused portrait on this. And again, these are presets, and I like to start with them, but then I can always go down and adjust down here if I want to by sliding my strength or softness or whatever. I'm going to leave that right out of the box the way it is. I'm quite happy with that. The next thing I want to do here is add a little bit more glow to this, and I'm going to go to a tool called Radiance, an adjustment called Radiance. And this is really a fun tool. You can get a lot of great effects, but a little bit goes a long way. So just to show you what I'm talking about, if I take this up and take it up to like 14, look what happens. I've really turned this, kind of electrified this image way beyond what I want to do. It doesn't take much to have an effect. I'm going to go back to 0, and then I'm going to bring this effect up only to 4. And it just adds a subtle softness to it. So if we turn that off, there's before and there's after, and it just gives it a nice soft glow, especially with this chiffon, or that has a name and I can't remember what it's called, but anyway, it just gives it a nice look. So now I'm ready to play with textures, and this is one of the things that I was looking forward to talking about today. This is where I use texture effects that I purchase, there are many within Topaz already, but you can also add your own textures or textures that you've purchased. One of my friends, Kathleen Clemens, who's a remarkable photographer out in Maine, she creates a package of textures that is great. And then I mentioned flypaper textures also. So we are now in the texture adjustment. These are the Topaz textures that come with the application. But if you notice here, here's a little box that you can add your own. If I hover over it, it tells me that it's a Open Texture Category Manager. So I'm going to click on that. And when I do, these are all the different categories that I've created, but I'm going to create a new one. And I'm just going to call it Flypaper Today. So I know which one it is. I'm going to say OK. And now I want to select that. Where'd it go? It's up here, alphabetical, Flypaper Today, and I'm going to select it. And now I'm going to go import the textures that I would like to import into Topaz. So I'm going to click Import, and apologize in advance, I don't have these well organized, so I'm going to have to pull this up this way. And all right, so what I'm looking at are, these are a number of my flypaper textures. And just to show for this example, I'm just going to select a group of them right here. And I'm going to then click Open. And it's now copying those textures into this folder that I created called Flypaper Today. And once I've finished with that, it's going to take a second. I should have chosen fewer of them, but there we go. And I'll say OK, and I'll close this up. And now when I come over here to my categories, I can look down here, and there's my Flypaper Today category. So I can select that, and there are those textures that I've added. So you can build your own textures. These are just JPEG files. So you can photograph the bark of a tree, rust on a element, or and create your own textures if you like, or you can purchase them as I have with Flypaper. What I'm going to do here is begin to apply some textures to this image. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I want to go here, and I'm going to choose the Flypaper package. This is one that I've used many times. And I'm going to slide down here. The way you select these is you can mouse over them and see how they're going to affect the image. Or you can slide down here, and I want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to go down and grab this one right here. And actually, I want this one. There we go. That's the one I want. So again, they aren't named, so you kind of have to look for where they are. So there's our texture. The way that this is controlled, it's sort of odd. You have an opacity slider up here. And if I slide this all the way to the right, we're seeing only the texture. Because right now, we have this set up so that the texture is the foreground image. I can also make the texture the background. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that this slider here is going to reveal there's no texture at all. And then I can increase the opacity, and now I have more of the texture showing. So this is where you're going to control how much of that texture you're going to have. Now, the other thing you have that's really cool, and this is true with every adjustment in Topaz, you have this blending mode option. If we click over here, these are all the standard blend modes that you'll find in just about any photo editing software. There's a dissolve. That's a great texture right there. You can slide over these, and what it's doing is it's determining how these textures are going to be blended together. Let's go over here and increase this a little bit, and then go back, look at multiply. So now we've got this really dark, rich tone to our image just by changing the blend mode. And you can experiment with these. Color burn is another one, gives you very dramatic. They're all very different, and I encourage you to look at them and see what you like. I'm going to go with this multiply, and I'm kind of doing this on the fly. I've done this several times, and each time I've done it, I've come out with a little bit different effect. but I kind of like that look. I might drop it down a little bit. But then I'm not done. I can come down here and I have adjustments that will affect the brightness, contrast, detail, saturation of that texture, not the image, but the texture. So I can darken that texture. I can increase the contrast of that texture. I can increase the detail. Some of it has a lot of grunge. See the detail coming out. I can saturate it more. So there's lots of different power that you have. The one other thing that you can do is if you go down and choose color strength down here, I'm going to slide this a little bit up, and now I can change the tone or the color of the texture, rather, the color. So I can change it to be more blue and so on, just by sliding along the spectrum here. I'm gonna not use that, so I'll drop it back down to 0 and it goes away, but I wanted you to see how that works. So now we have our texture applied, and sorry, it keeps changing because I mouse over the thing. So there's our texture as it is, but I want to do another texture. So one of the ways you can do that, I could just add another texture layer, but if you notice down here, there's an enhance button. And you will find this button in every one of the adjustments that you apply with Topaz. What we're going to do is select that, and it's going to allow us to apply another adjustment, which I'm going to choose texture, and it's going to apply it only to this layer. So basically, we're putting a texture in the texture. So for this one, I'm going to choose the fly paper. And I want to go down and get this one right here, I believe. Yeah, let's choose something more dramatic than that. Let's choose this. Well, maybe that's the same one we had before. Sorry. Let's go here. All right, so we will use that. So now what we have are, if we come back up here, we still control that with our opacity slider. Now we're working with this texture on that image. And again, I can increase or decrease the opacity. I can go to normal and choose a different blend mode if I like. I'm going to leave this one at blend mode. I'm going to leave this one at normal. I can brighten it. And this again is affecting only the texture, not the image. And I can do the detail a little bit. I can saturate it a little bit and so on. So I'm just going to leave that the way it is. And I'm going to close this up. And there's our image. We've added some tonality to it. And now here's the other thing that you can do. Let's say you've done this and you're looking at it now and you've done all these adjustments and you're thinking, man, it's too much. Well, if you come down here, you have an opacity slider that affects all of these at once. So we can drop the opacity. If we take it all the way down to nothing, that's our image when we started. None of these effects are applied. But if I increase the opacity, I can slide this along here and look for a sweet spot that gives me just what I want. Maybe it's there instead of full-blown effects. So you have a lot of control here. So that's it. If I was finished with this image, then I might go over here. Let's just bring this back up to full. And let's say I like this the way it is, and I'm going to go over here and I want to put my signature on it. So I have a photo logo signature here. I'm going to drag it over here and drop it. It's an image layer. It appears on my image. And I just grab these handles and whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I'm going to grab this and size it and position it where I want it, down here somewhere. And once I get it where I want it, whoops, that's not where I want it, but you get the idea. So getting a little bit of a lag here with the webinar going on. Okay, so that's it. Now I would save this image out to my camera roll and I'm done. So let's go on to something new here, a different image. I'm going to go ahead and close this. So this image, this is one of the dancers that I photographed in Cuba. We took them out on the street and had a blast. And what I want to do with this image, this is an iPhone image. And so it's just another image type that you can work with. And what I want to do with this, I'm going to do some basic work on it, and then we're going to mask it. So I'm going to start out by going to the, I notice there's a spot right here that I want to get rid of. It's like something on her dress or in the material. So I'm going to use the healing tool down here, and I'll tap on that, and I'm going to come up here and drop my healing brush down a little bit, and can increase the size of the image. And all I'm using is a little roller wheel on my mouse to increase the size of my image. And then I can come over here and take care of that little spot. That's not bad. And that's that. I'm going to say done. And I'm not worried about anything else out here because we're going to actually separate her from this background. So before I do that, though, I want to get her looking good. So I want to, again, I'm going to run AI clear on this image. So again, one of the first steps I do, and let's just watch how this affects. Now, again, this is a lower res iPhone image, and I chose this particular image partly because I don't care that it's low res, because I'm going to be doing some things to it with texture effects and AI remix, and it isn't going to matter. But even so, we can see that it's given us a little bit clearer image than we had by running AI clear on this. And there I go. You notice I resized this, and AI clear is recalculating, so it's slowing things down. I forgot to apply. So I want to let it finish its calculation, and then I want to apply that effect. So now I'm working with this image has AI clear applied to it, but we're not going to have to see that adjustment keep calculating. So now again, I want to look at my histogram. Actually, what I don't care about any of this part of the image out here, I want to look at her face and dress and body, and I want to drop my blacks down. I want to bring my whites up, and again, I'm looking at her face. I don't care if this blows out or not. I'm looking at her face and her dress, and that's about what I want right there. And then the next thing I'm going to do, look at my notes here again. Okay, that's really about it. What I could do, I might do a little bit of a, let's just leave that. I think that's fine. So now what I want to do, I'm going to use a tool called AI Remix. This is another tool that uses artificial intelligence. I go up here to the plugins, and I'm going to choose Topaz Remask. And Remask, what they've done is sample like 200 different artists, contemporary and traditional. And oh, I'm getting my signals crossed. This is Remask. I was thinking of Remix. Remask is the tool that's going to let us cut her out from the background. So this is what it looks like when it comes in. Over here we have our tools for filling. The green is for keeping what we want to keep. This is for cutting what we want to remove. And this blue is our compute brush, and that's what we start with. I'm going to select that, and I need to increase my brush size. So this is I'm going to click on this blue button here. I can size my brush. And what I want to do is I don't want a real small brush. When I first started doing this, I used a real tiny brush and thought I had to get right on the edge of her arm. No, it's different. It's really kind of counterintuitive. You want a brush that is large enough that you can split the difference between how much of it goes on the subject. I'm having a hard time adjusting. There we go. And how much of it goes on the background. So you see what I'm doing? I'm going down and I'm kind of splitting the difference between her body and the background. And what's happening is that we're collecting data in this little stripe that's going to allow Remask to determine where that edge is. And it's going to select that from and separate it from the background. So again, I want to make sure that I get part of her arm, about halfway on her arm. I might have gone too far in there. And then up this way and out on her hand. And then I have this area in here that I need to get in. And honestly, I am going very fast for the sake of demonstration, so this may not be perfect. You'll spend more time with your stuff. So now we've done our outline. Now we need to tell AI Remask what we want to cut and what we want to keep. So if I go down here to the fills buttons, I'm going to click the cut fill, and I'm going to dump this bucket of cut fill and say, okay, cut all that out. And then in here, I want to cut that out too. So now the green we're going to keep and the red we're going to cut. And now I'm going to go down to the compute mask, and it's going to create our mask. So there is our mask. Now, when you analyze this mask, these areas that you see that are kind of gray along the edge, those are areas that might be problematic in your final mask. So what you want to do is take your keep button, and come in, and you notice I'm just tapping in those areas where there's gray. And I am not, you notice I'm not painting, I'm not dragging, I'm just clicking. And this is the best way to clean this up. Now, I'm not gonna do this precisely because it would just take too long for the demo, but you can see what I'm doing. Now, you see how it's filling in those gray areas. And then up here on her hand, we need to get a lot of that fixed. Now, if there are areas where there's material that needs to be cut, we would switch to the cut brush and do the same thing. Come over here and tap, and you see how it's kind of clearing that gray away? That's going to help clean up our mask. All right, that's all I'm going to do on this one right now on the cleaning up, because it's so tedious for the demo. But what I want to do now is replace that background with a texture. So I'm going to go down here to where it says image, click on that, and it takes me out again. I'm going to navigate to my textures, and you're going to have yours and wherever you have them, and it's probably going to be a lot better organized than mine. So I'm going to go out here and I'm going to choose a texture, and I'm just going to randomly select one here and open it, and there's our texture. Now you notice it doesn't cover the whole image, so I'm going to grab these corners and expand it, and then click on this to close that up. So now there's our image. Now you can see there are areas that aren't well masked, but those are things that I would have cleaned up had I spent more time with this. But for the demo, I'm not going to do that. But you can always, even now, you can go in, choose your tools, and see how I'm kind of cleaning that up a little bit. It's very easy to do, and it's such a smart application in how it finds the things that you want to replace. Anyway, I'm not going to do any more of that. What I'm going to do at this point, I want to show you, once you've added your texture, you have all of these adjustments that let you play with it. So we can brighten it, we can darken it. That's kind of cool. We can increase the contrast a little bit. We can decrease the saturation. So you could put her on a totally black background, which is kind of neat. Or you can increase that saturation and soak it a little bit more in color. You can change the temperature, so you can cool it off or warm it up. All of these are kind of standard adjustments. One that I really enjoy is using blur. So I'll take the blur and slide this all the way up to there, and look, now we've got this really soft blur. So now I'm going to go ahead and save this image. Now I'm going to save it, and I'm just going to call it Topaz webinar today, and I'm going to save it out here in my Topaz folder. And depending on how you have this set up, you may do a different approach to this than I'm doing. You may be running this independently or through other applications, but I'm going to go ahead and say okay here, and it's going to take me back into Topaz Studio, and here's our masked image. I don't really need that for what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out now and open that image that we just saved to my folder. And here it is, Topaz webinar today. I'm going to open it up, and there's our image. So now what I want to do is I want to add another texture on top of this. So I'm going to go into my textures tool, and once again, I'm going to go to and pick out Flypaper 2. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, and then I'm going to choose this. I'm just going to pick one here. Let's just choose that one. And again, I can control the opacity and intensity of that with the opacity slider here. So let's say maybe I don't like that one. Let's do something different. Let's try that. Okay, so there we go. So I'm going to bring that up. Now, what I'm seeing here, I really like the texture on this background and everything. I can brighten it a little bit or darken it, but I don't like the fact that she's covered by the texture. Well, what we're going to do to fix that is to use a masking feature. Masking feature is something you'll find in every adjustment. So we're in the texture adjustment. The masking feature is always right here. This time it's showing the texture, but in other adjustments, there will be a little plus sign there. I'm going to select that, and now we have the ability to mask out that top layer over her body. Now, bear with me because I always get this backwards, but hopefully I'm going to get it right this time. I'm going to switch. Nope, that's not it. I'm going to switch that back. I'm going to go here, select my brush, and I'm going to switch this to, no, I want to stay here. Is that right? Yes. Okay. So what I'm doing now is wiping away that top layer using the mask tool. Now, over here, I can adjust the size of my brush, make it smaller. And you notice there's a red circle and a green circle. That green circle is known as edge aware. There's a switch down here to turn it on or off. When edge aware is on, if I get close to my edge and keep the edge between the red circle and the green circle, Topaz is smart enough to find the edge that I want and help me mask in where I want to be. And again, I'm going very, very quickly for the sake of the demo, but you get the idea. And we can go up in here and get her hair and her head. And then if I need to get into her arms, I'm going to use my little roller ball and slide in. Now, I want to get her arm. How do I get that? Well, if I come over here to the navigation button at the top on the right and slide up, I can navigate with this little box. And I can then make my radius smaller, and I can come in and get her and I'm going really, really fast, so it's not perfect, and I can get this and so on. So now there's our mask partly done. I'm not going to finish it, but you get the idea. You can clean up that and have her now on this beautiful background with this texture that you've created, and it's awesome. The next thing that I'm going to show you here is this other tool with AI Remix. I'm going to go really quick here. I'm going to select AI Remix. This is a tool that, again, it has sampled 200 different forms of art, contemporary and otherwise, traditional, and it creates these looks. And you can select the look. Look at that. I mean, that's just really cool, I think. You've got all these different options that you can do. You can then adjust those options with brightness, saturation, and so on. And the looks that you can create with this are amazing. You have the ability, this is a low strength for that. You can also have a high strength of that effect. Lots and lots of control here. I'm going to stop with that, and I want to get to one last thing before we run out of time here. I'm aware that we're close to 10 till. The other thing that I've been wanting to show you today is the new tool that's come out called AI Gigapixel. This is the tool that allows us to upsize images so that we can print at large sizes. To demonstrate this, it's kind of hard to demonstrate. So what I've done to show kind of dramatically show how this works. Let's see here. I have created I made this image of the barn here. It's an iPhone image. I made it quite some time ago, posted it to Facebook. So to demonstrate Gigapixel, I downloaded this image from Facebook. If you look, it's a 42 kilobyte image. It's a tiny little image. You couldn't print that more than the size of maybe 2x3 at any quality, inches. And so I used that image. That's the one I'm going to run through AI Gigapixel. So I'm going to take that image from here and I'm going to drag it over here on the AI Gigapixel application. let me just expand my screen here. This is what it looks like. Here's our image that we just brought in. Here are the enlargement options that we have. You can enlarge by scale, so you can enlarge by percentage, or you can enlarge by size. You can also select a moderate or strong noise and blur reduction. Now, AI Gigapixel is not a noise reduction software specifically, but in the process of imagining what the image needs to complete it, it will often correct noise and blur issues that you have. I'm going to just leave this on moderate. You can choose different image qualities and so on. Down here, you've got an output. It gives you a suffix on the end of your file. And I like to write in here 400, so I know that I've run this image at 400%. And because I'm using a computer that has less than the recommended power, I'm using the CPU option as opposed to the GPU option. So I'm going to go ahead and hit start. And this thing's going to take a second to go through its process. Now, how long it takes to process your image is going to depend on a number of different variables. It's going to depend on your computer and how much processing power you have, but it's also going to depend on the size of the file that you've chosen to process. It's going to depend on whether you're scaling at 150 versus 400 versus 600. It's going to be slower if you don't match the input on your color profile. So there are lots of different factors that are going to influence how quickly this goes. And the way I understand it, and again, Rose and Heath can fill in here, but AI Gigapixel has been trained on millions of different images, and it will actually look at an image that doesn't have enough pixels to complete it at a large size, and it imagines what's supposed to be there and fills it in, and it fills it in really accurately. I mean, it's really pretty mind-blowing. This is almost finished, and when it is, I'm going to show you what this looks like in Photoshop. In fact, I'm just going to stop this. There's no point in waiting. It's almost done. It's going to be done here in 3 seconds. But I wanted you to see the interface and see how it works. Once it's done, it turns green. It's done now. I'm going to go. It's already saved it to the location, so I don't have to save anything or do anything else. I'm just going to clear this, and I'm going to close AI Gigapixel. Okay, so what we're looking at here, and I brought these into Photoshop because it's just about the easiest way I can think of, and Heath has helped me with this quite a bit. What we're looking at here is the 400 gigapixel result, and then we're looking at the original underneath that. So what I'm going to do is go out to, I'm going to enlarge this to 200% and kind of pick an area of the image. So what we're looking at right now is the original image that I downloaded out of Facebook, the 42 kilobyte image. And as you can see, it looks horrific. You can't even make out the barn. But look what happens when I turn that off. I'm revealing what's left. This is the AI Gigapixel result. I mean, that's pretty phenomenal. We've taken a 42 kilobyte file and produced this kind of quality in the image. So if we go, that's the 400. If we go to the 600, do the same thing. We're going to blow this up 200%, and I'll find an area of the image. Look at the trees. This is the original image. And then this is the image after it's been processed in AI Gigapixel. I mean, here you can't even tell these are trees, but this is the magic of AI Gigapixel. It's looking at this itself and it's going, oh, those are trees. And it takes what it knows from all these sampling of trees it's done, and it imagines what needs to be there, and it turns it into that. So now you have the ability to take this image and print it at a much larger size with integrity. I mean, we're looking at this at 600%. You're probably never going to, enlarge anything quite or print anything, at a huge size like that. But you could blow up a normal size image the size of a billboard, literally. So what is this good for? It's good for low res images like iPhone, mobile phone images. It's good for like what I just did. If you've got an image that you need to, that you've taken and on Facebook, you can download it and do it. But also you can take a segment of a video clip, like a single frame out of a video, and run that through AI Gigapixel and end up with a really wonderful result. Okay, guys, I am aware of the time. I'm going to turn it back over to Rose.
And of course, you can always go and follow Rad and his photography and his journey and all of his upcoming workshops and everything that he has going on his website there, as well as Facebook. And if you have specific questions, he would love to answer them as well. And if you have questions for myself, Heath, anyone else in the office, I know James is there in support, go ahead and reply and contact us. Contact us at webinars@topazlabs.com. And of course, we will give you a recording here shortly once we're done editing and doing all that fun stuff. I had a great time. I hope you had a great time with me. I know this is probably one of the second times I've hosted a webinar, so I know I have big shoes to fill. Heath is great. So thanks everyone for attending, and everyone have a great day.
Bye. Thanks a lot.